Fredrick Joseph Rutland was a hero from the Battle of Jutland that took place in World War I, who was born on October 21, 1886 in Weymouth, England. He joined the Royal Navy as a boy seaman in 1901, and by December 1914 he had risen through the ranks and promoted to Flight Sub-Lieutenant in the Royal Naval Air Service, and was awarded his aviator's certificate by the Royal Aero Club in January 1915 after training at East Church in the UK. Then in March he was posted to the HMS Engadin. HMS Engadin originally started life as a channel ferry under the name of SS Engadin, and was requisitioned by the Admiralty in August 1914 after the commencement of World War I. She was converted into a seaplane carrier and commissioned into the fleet service in September 1914. She received further modifications in 1915, served at the Battle of Jutland in 1916, and remained part of a battle cruiser fleet in the North Sea until early 1918, where she was transferred to the Mediterranean fleet. In 1919, she was sold back into civilian use, and in 1933 she was sold to a Philippines company under the name of SS Corridor, and was sunk in 1941 by a suspected Japanese mine. The Battle of Jutland was a major seafaring battle between the Royal Navy's Grand Fleet and the Imperial German Navy's High Seas Fleet. It took part between May 31 to June 1st, 1916. It was during this sea engagement that Fredrick Joseph Rutland earned a Distinguished Service Order, or the DSO. He was ordered to fly a short Type 184 float plane to scout for enemy ships. He did this and then reported them back to the Engadin. But to do so, he had to fly his plane low at around 900 feet above the water and within a distance of a little over 1.5 miles of the enemy. This drew heavy enemy fire. Not long after he had transmitted his sightings, the plane's fuel line ruptured, so he had to land the plane on the ocean. The crew managed to repair the problem, and he reported that he was ready to get airborne again, but instead he was ordered to taxi back to the Engadin. Also during the Battle of Jutland, the armoured cruiser HMS Warrior had been damaged after taking some hits from German ships. So the HMS Engadin tried to tow the Warrior, but the ship began sinking. So the crew were transferred to the Engadin, but one of the wounded men fell from his stretcher into the sea. So Rutland tied a rope around his waist and dived into the water and saved him, which earned him his second award, the Albert Medal in Gold. By June 1917, he was a flight commander. In that same month, he successfully launched a Sopwith pump from a flying platform mounted on top of one of the gun turrets located on the cruiser HMS Yarmouth, the first time this had ever been achieved. When the Royal Air Force was formed in 1918, he transferred in and was appointed in 1921 as the commander of the RAF unit located on HMS Eagle. In 1922, he was secretly approached by the Japanese to gain his interest in coming to work for them in Japan. In 1923, he resigned his commission due to an adultery affair. In December 1922, MI5 received reliable information that the Japanese government had been secretly negotiating with an officer of the RAF known as Fredrick Joseph Rutland, who would spend some time in France before travelling to Japan to work. This information proved to be correct. Rutland retired in October 1923 from the RAF, gained employment in a wireless company in the UK, before in March 1924, where he took up residence in France. Then in July 1924, he left Marseille on the ship Kaiser in Hein for Yokohama, Japan. MI5 had managed to find out that while in France, Rutland had received visits from Japanese gentlemen 2 to 3 times per week, including on one occasion he held a party that was solely attended by Japanese people. Now we have to again remember that Japan was on good terms with the British at this stage in history, and what Rutland was doing had broken no laws in Britain. In 1924, Rutland had shown to be working with the Mitsubishi Company and had a house in Kamakura, and he was taking the train up to Tokyo every day, but was expected to start travelling to Yokosuka as the Japanese were in the process of building a secret naval air base. By 1925, Rutland had been invited and had accepted an invitation for membership to the Tokyo edition of the British Legion, which goes to show that at the time there are numerous ex-British servicemen working in Japan or living in Japan. Also in 1925, he'd made adjustments to the Olia undercarriage or shock absorber system, which were trialled at the Kasimugama airfield north of Tokyo. After this, his contract was then extended to give Japanese advice on naval flying, especially on aircraft carriers. After leaving Japan in 1927, Rutland travelled through parts of South America before returning to Britain in late 1928, where he gained work with his brother-in-law as a salesman. In 1931, he was contacted by a Shiro Takasu, a military attaché at the Japanese Embassy in London. Shiro Takasu was a Korean naval officer in the Imperial Japanese Navy. He served in various roles from military attachés to commanding ships in the Imperial Japanese Navy. He was an opponent of Japan going to war with the Western countries. He served in World War II as an admiral in command of various fleets. He died of an unnamed illness in 1944. This time the Japanese wanted him to work in Los Angeles obtaining information on America's war preparations. Rutland's original Japanese code name was Furuyama, but was changed to Shinkawa. To be able to travel without suspicions, Rutland was to set up a cover business in the UK. He did that, and it was called the International Trading Co., General Merchants of Importing and Exporting. In Los Angeles, he purchased a house and set up a stockbroking business called Rutland, Edwards & Co. Despite this being only 1934-1935, American-Japanese relations had been heading downhill for the best part of a decade. In 1924, the United States banned most immigration from Japan. It got worse after Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, which led to the Simpson Doctrine in 1932 of not recognising states that had been created from aggression. Due to the anti-Japanese sentiment at the time, there was a need for a white Western person to obtain information that could help the Japanese. But even the Japanese were questioning the reliance of a single white man. The reasoning in setting up in Los Angeles was the nearby factories that were producing planes for the American military. The Douglas Aircraft Company was based in Santa Monica, while Lockheed was based in Burbank. Douglas produced the DC-3 transport plane, introduced in 1936, and later in the war they were one of three companies that produced the B-17 bomber. Lockheed produced the P-38 Lightning that was introduced to the US military service in 1941. Rutland had no contacts at Lockheed, so he got a former member of the Irish Republican Army, or the IRA, a job at Lockheed as a janitor. Raymond Alexander Barry became of interest to the FBI after secrets of the P-38 Lightning were leaked not long after he gained employment. By 1941, Rutland had also become of interest to the FBI. They had evidence that he'd been employed by the Japanese, but they wanted to avoid arresting an ex-British officer, so it was decided to push him back to Britain and let them deal with the matter. In early October 1941, Rutland had arrived back in the UK. From then onwards, he was watched by MI5, and on interrogation, he pleaded innocent because Japan, Britain and the USA were not at war. Then the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, and the British government ordered that Rutland be detained under Regulation 18B. Regulation 18B of the Defence Regulations 1939 allowed detainment of any person that is believed to have enemy associations. On December 16, 1941, Rutland was taken to Brixton Prison and was detained until December 22, 1943. His release was conditional on the usual conditions that people on bail receive. After the war, he never returned to America to see his wife and kids. He committed suicide on January 28, 1949. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please check out my other videos. Until next time.